Dobrodošli u COREdialog, podcast dobre prakse. Od praktičara za praktičare. Pričamo o iskustvima, učenjima i metodama koje nas vraćaju kući. In this episode, we're delighted to have Yakov Darling Khan, a super interesting teacher and a lifelong student of the healing and creative arts. He's a contemporary shaman, author, co-founder of movement medicine, devoted husband and father, and truly warm and grounded human being. In this episode, we're talking about shamanic practice through the lenses of movement medicine and integration of shamanic practice with modern science. Yakov Darling Khan is the author of Jaguar in the Body, Butterfly in the Heart, the real-life initiation of an everyday shaman, and Shaman, invoking power, purpose, and presence in the core of who you are. He also co-authored Movement Medicine. He is known for his blend of down-to-earth strength, humility, and uplifting humor. The respect in which he is held as a practicing shaman by indigenous shamans and communities from the Arctic to the Amazon is testament to his authenticity. Traveling the world since 1989, to work with groups delivering movement medicine in very diverse settings, Yakov has worked with audiences across the globe. He continues to offer his work through the School of Movement Medicine, which he co-founded with his wife of nearly 4 decades, Susannah Darling Khan. His work is inspiring, contemporary and practical, and his audience includes people from all walks of life. Yakov advocates developing embodied self-awareness in the service of giving what's inside us back to life. He encourages those he works with to dance with what life has given them as the raw material for living the most creative, useful, and fulfilling lives possible. He believes that to make a difference in the world, we must develop our personal power alongside the wisdom to use it responsibly. He encourages those he works with to live with an awareness of mortality and the miracle of life in order to keep things grounded and real. He's a lifelong student of the healing and creative arts. And now we give you an episode with Yakov Darling Khan, which we named Integrated Shamanic Practice Through Movement Medicine. Enjoy.
Hello everyone. Welcome to another COREdialog. Today we have a very special guest. Today with us is Yakov Darling Khan, contemporary modern shaman, an author, devoted husband, father, and co-founder of Movement Medicine. Welcome, Yakov.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. What a fabulous title. COREdialog. Love it.
Yeah.
Hits you right there, straight away.
In core.
Right there. Boom.
I'm very delighted to have you here, to have a talk with you. I read your books, so I know a little bit about your work. And just for start, so we ask every guest actually how it all started, how the path invited you, and a little bit about your journey up until now. I know that we have a limited time.
Sure.
But
I'll do my best to distill something useful. The longer you live, the harder that gets. But anyway, when I was really young, the thing that was most fascinating for me was where I went to when I was asleep. My dream life had a sense of much deeper reality and much more a sense of ease and holding and space to be myself than was true when I was awake. Not to blame my family or my culture, it was just like that for me, that where I went when I dreamed, I used to do this meditation from as long as I can remember. And I don't know where I learned it or where it came from, but I couldn't wait to get to bed at night. And in that time, as I was falling asleep, I'd feel myself falling backwards through the layers of connection: body, bed, family, home, street, town, county, country, continent, world, until I felt like literally that my thumbs, particularly my thumbs, could tickle the stars. And I'd be in that space of awe and wonder. And as I was falling asleep, I would always ask the question. My rabbi, I was born Jewish, I am Jewish, told me that God created everything. And I was like, great, okay, can't argue with that. But what's much more interesting to me is, well, if God created everything, what created God? Where did this begin? Which is the question you asked me. And that question, which is so rich because it's at that gateway between what's known and what's unknown. So it's the gateway to the unknown. And for me, that question was like the deepest joy. And I would fall asleep with that, like infused with that question every night. And that would be the gateway to my dreaming. And in my dreaming, I was really out there. That was wonderful. But as I grew older, the separation between where I was when I was dreaming and where I was when I was awake was really difficult, because here in my body, in the world, I had to adapt. I had to survive like we all do. I had to find my way. I had to find the masks, the language. And so the way that I did that as a child was, well, the best thing then is when I was 7, I told my parents I'm going to be a rabbi. That's the thing that I want to do, because that's the thing that's available to me in my culture. And that was fine, and I was very passionate about it. God, the mystery, was like the fascination. But as a teenager, I found myself, I think like many of us, really sensitive to my environment. So, and the thing that I was most sensitive to was the incongruity between somebody's body shape, what they were saying, and what they were feeling. And there was this feeling of like, I hear the words, but I see the body and I sense the feelings, and there's how do you know which to trust? There's no congruity. So that was very disturbing and difficult. I don't think that's particularly unusual. But I also was very sensitive to what people were thinking, not so much about me, but about each other. So, teenager at parties, like, he's dancing with her, but he's only dancing with her because he wants to be close to her. And she's like this and that. And it was all like a very confusing theater piece. And I didn't have the tools to manage that sense of conflict, of what I was feeling, what I felt I had to be in order to fit in. Anyway, so I pushed all of that more psychic awareness, like, it's just too difficult. So I got myself into sport and getting physical and, playing hockey and like whatever I could do that gave me a channel for that frustration and difficulty in a way that was managed, productive, creative, meaningful to a degree. But then as I shifted from teenage years into early 20s, and I met my wife when I was 22, which is 38 years ago. And during that time, she was already training as a Gestalt psychotherapist. I was into I call it the anti-everything movement, like basically anti-apartheid, anti-animal cruelty, anti-everything that I could say was wrong with the world, I was into it. And it was all wrong and it was all out there. And like, that's wrong and this is wrong. And we're the next generation and we know how it needs to be and we're going to fix it. And I was into nonviolent direct action. I was in the peace movement. I got arrested many times. I was from this perspective, I can see what a unpleasant, passive aggressive, superior young man I was, arrogant, and how I got these the people who were arresting me to express all that anger, and then I could be superior. Look, see, they can't control their anger. They don't know what to do. And yet there was one particular moment I was cutting through a fence with my big shiny bolt cutters around Faslane nuclear base in Scotland, where they were building nuclear submarines. And the loch was polluted with radiation. This had been hidden. And so we went on the roof of this building and we'd have to cut through this wire with a big banner to say, test the loch, test the waters in the loch. And as I was cutting through, it was like 4 a.m. We were in this men's group and it was very exciting. In those days, you could do that kind of action because we were in a different time than we are now. Now that would be a dangerous thing to do. You're more likely to be even shot, I would say. It's more difficult to protest in that way. But in the middle of the night, as I was cutting through, I could feel literally every clip in the wire. I could feel something inside me go, ow, ow. Like this feeling of, actually, that fence that I'm cutting down is in me. And I had no context for that. But I was arrested, so I had 4 days in a cell. That's where I did my first Zen meditation because there was nothing to look at but the wall. And so I looked at the wall and I sat with that. What is that feeling? And that really opened a doorway to me of like, of course there's things that we need to develop, evolve, improve in the world. Of course there's suffering and cruelty and all of these things that are obvious, I think, to anyone. But the change also, parallel, needs to happen in here. So then I started my work with psychotherapy, with healing. And then around that time, I was struck by lightning on a golf course. Not directly, an umbrella I was holding. We were in a storm with a friend standing next to me with a metal umbrella, very stupid thing to do. I don't know what I was thinking. And he got thrown off me and I felt like a tent peg that was being pushed into the ground. And I wasn't sure if I was dead. There was no damage. There was the hit of lightning was painful, very painful, but there was no damage. But in that moment, when I came round and there was the confusion, like, am I dead? Am I alive? What's happened? In that in-between space, memories like they say your life passes before you very, very fast, very, very fast. All these memories of what I was really into as a child that I pushed away as a teenager in order to fit in just came right back into my body. And it was like a rush of adrenaline and oxytocin and like a proper chemical download. It was a trip. Chemicals from the brain just flooding the body. I felt fantastic. I felt wide awake. I felt I'd been given another chance. And from there, I started to look for philosophy, idea, culture, stories, ways of being in the world that could make sense of my experience. And when I discovered there was such a thing called shamanism, I was like, oh, thank God for that. Finally, there is a universal language of experience that's, old and belongs to every culture. Every culture has within it those roots of connectivity to earth, to body, to sexuality, to the changing seasons, to the cycles of life, to our responsibilities as human beings, to our place in the web of life. Every culture has had this, and a respect for our ancestors, a respect for dreams, for the non-physical world, the world of imagination, a respect for the unknown, for our mortality, all of these things. And I was just like a sponge, just like taking in all of that Carlos Castaneda. And I found teachers from Native American traditions primarily. I was super grateful. I was given a pipe, a Lakota pipe, by my therapist. I mean, this is in the modern world where we talk about cultural appropriation. This is very politically incorrect, but this is how it was for me. I was given this pipe by my therapist, who was from Malta, who'd been given it by a Lakota medicine man. And my therapist said, this is for you. I received this. I didn't really know anything about it, but I sat with it every day. And I understood that I'd been given something that was an invitation to remember how to pray, not in words that are written in a book. That's fine and beautiful and has a sense of community and value. But this was prayer from within, from really a deep place. And that pipe, which is all about the bowl and the stem, the yin and the yang, the feminine and the masculine, and peace, connection. Through that, and through learning with the people I was lucky enough to train with and study with, I started to understand. And at that time, I met then Gabrielle Roth, and my wife and I discovered Gabrielle Roth through separate channels, and we both booked on the same workshop, and that we didn't know. It was only 2 days before. I was like, Susannah, what are you doing for the weekend? She said, oh, I'm going to this dance workshop. And I was like, what, like a shamanic dance? Yes. Gabrielle Roth? Yes. I'm going there too. Oh, no, but that's my thing. Well, it's my thing too. And we had a little bit of a and then we were like, well, we'll go together. And I was deeply uncomfortable about the idea of dancing. I hated dancing. Like, dancing was something I did when I was drunk at a wedding, and, only because I had to, because, I wanted to get close to somebody. So I had to ask them to dance. So very, very, very uncomfortable, but 10 minutes literally with Gabrielle in the room. And at that time, this was 1988, nobody knew about Gabrielle Roth. Nobody knew about what's now called conscious dance. There was nothing like that in that I knew of. There was this one thing in London called the Whirligig, which in America was called the Barefoot Boogie, which was a non-alcohol, barefoot dance space just to dance, but completely without structure, more like ecstatic dance these days. And very wonderful. But Gabrielle's thing was like, there was a map to follow. And what I learned immediately with her was how to shift my attention from what I was thinking about, like self-consciousness. Oh, I don't like this. Oh God, am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? Like look at everyone else. Everyone looks so at ease. They look so happy together. I'm all on my own, like, oh, like, rah, 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 like just non-stop internal dialogue, self-critical, unpleasant, and Gabrielle was like acknowledging that internal dialogue and saying, that is so, but put your attention on the sensation of the body and rhythm and breath. And it was that simple. I was astonished. Just with that, the first meditation we did with Gabrielle, which was, she called it body parts. Head, shoulders, elbows, hands, backbone, hips, knees, feet. That's it. Put your attention here, 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 here. And let that part of the body listen to rhythm and be moved by it. I could not believe the creativity that was inside this being, that was just waiting for me to give it permission. And like, it wasn't just movement, it was poetry. And it was sweaty, and it was wild, and it was edgy, and it was emotional. Like, it was like being in a storm of emotion. Not with like, oh, I'm sad about my mother or my... There was no story. It was just all in here. And so one last thing, because this is... I'm trying to...
Keep it going.
Okay.
It's good.
Great, good. So from there, Susannah and I both within 10 minutes went, this is our teacher, that's that, this is the work we're going to do. The first question we asked Gabrielle was, how can we help? We're here, we're young, we get it, at least this much of it, we're here. And we just dedicated ourselves to that work. And we started teaching less than a year later. And we were always the youngest people in our class. I wonder if we need to unplug this thing. It seems to, I think it's that white one.
Yeah, I will do it yesterday as well.
Yeah, it makes a, thank you. Thank you. Beep. 21st century sounds. Yeah, it was extraordinary what Gabrielle was teaching, and we just started. And because she was in the States and we were in Europe and we were young, we just went for it. We started traveling everywhere. Our first workshops had 2 people, 3 people, 4. Usually we had to pay for the privilege of teaching, and it was difficult and scary, but when you're young and there's just the 2 of you, it's like, well, we just keep going. And we did. And we slowly built this practice in Europe and brought this work to many, many places.
And you were basically teaching 5 rhythms.
That's correct. We were teaching 5 rhythms. It was our deep love, and it was wonderful work. And it is wonderful work. It's very, very, very simple, direct way back to the wisdom of the moving body and the moving heart and the moving mind also. However, after a few years, we were also like, we're noticing that the level of freedom that we experience on the dance floor and the level of freedom we experience off the dance floor are, this again, getting further and further apart. Like, this is ecstatic and easy and like community, and we're together, and this is life, this is how life is, and like, this is hard, this is every day, this is money, this is the difficulty of relationship, mind, ego, like all of this. Like, the mind could be quiet for some time dancing, but it didn't change anything when we stopped dancing. Nothing changed, in fact. And beyond that initial big change of like there is intelligence and creativity here. That's massive already. But how to then integrate that and build a bridge between the dance on the dance floor and the dance of day-to-day life.
And here, are you speaking about yourself or about the people you were working with?
No, myself and Susannah and our relationship and everyone that I saw. Everyone was struggling with the same thing. And so we were clear there was something missing for our lives, and not wrong with the work, but something missing. And we were then also at a similar time, I had been lucky enough to meet a Sami shaman who had been in my dreams for 12 years. And
that's an incredible story.
It's a crazy story. That story had me thinking I'd really lost my mind. I was like, I've lost my mind, or I'm in a dream like a Carlos Castaneda novel, or this is happening, but I don't get it. But it was crazy, and I wrote about that, as you know, in my first solo book, and yeah, it's a very fascinating story of how in many indigenous cultures, what happens in dreaming, and this comes right back to my childhood, is every bit as real as what happens in the waking dream. The indigenous people call this physical world. This is the waking dream. That's the sleeping dream. But it's all dreaming. And that connection, so I had this connection to this figure who I just called the old man of the north. I assumed he was some kind of helpful archetypal figure, like a wise old man. But then through that crazy journey, I met him in his home, which I recognized like my own back garden. And when I saw his face, I was up in a town called Kautokeino in the north of the Arctic Circle in Norway. And I'd gone there to meet him with another Sami medicine woman. And when I saw his face, he turned to look at me and I was like, you. And he just was like, well, this has been a pattern for me. Whenever I meet indigenous shamans, they're always like, they're always laughing at me. I'm like, what's so funny? I mean, I laugh because what else can you do? And it was not an unpleasant laughter, but I came to understand that it could be tears, it could be laughter, because it's a recognition of like, there's a connection, and they call the call of to be a shaman the vocation, which is just a role. It's not something special. It's like, a teacher, a carpenter, an artist, whatever it is. The shaman is a role in the community. But they say that the call to that path, they call it the blessed curse, because it's difficult. Because your job, the role of the shaman is to be, my friend Arkan Lushwala talks about it like this: you're on the ship, holding the wheel high up so you can see what's coming, and you're connected to where we've come from, and you can see what's going on, and it's your job to be the messenger and to bring the news to the community and to create ritual and ceremony where the individuals in the community can remember how their personal story relates to an archetypal human story, a community story. It's part of a process of evolution of life. And ceremony is the place where we come back to that sense of what we're connected to and what's driving us, what matters to us, and to remember that, and to, you know, I don't know about you, but life impacts us. You know, there's bad news every day. There's lots of good news as well, by the way. And if you're a doom scroller, make sure you look for good news, because there's plenty of it. There really is. But life impacts us. And ceremony is the place to acknowledge the impact, to release that impact, like to come from the place of, back into, shake it all off like a storm, like a butterfly inside the cocoon. Shake, 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 release. Come back to connection, connection, connection. Circle, community, belonging. Purpose. Yes, I remember. Commitment. This is what my life is. Go back into your life, get on with it. And so, yeah, I was very blessed to be met and welcomed. And Gabrielle too, you know, she said to me, yes, Yakov, you are a shaman, and it's going to take you many years to understand what that means and to find peace with it. It's very interesting, because I really wanted to be a shaman. I wanted it so much, like, because it had for the part of me that was wounded, in that place of my connection to the non-physical world, which I hadn't found a way of meeting my family, my friends in that reality. There was no language for it. And so when that happens, that part of us is seeking recognition, like a plant needs the light of the sun or the rain. And so I wanted that. But in that wanting, there was so much of my own hurt. And of course, that creates some kind of contortions in, let's call it the spiritual ego. Like, oh yes, Gabrielle tells me that I'm a shaman. That must mean I'm really special. I went through this whole process of not understanding what it was even I wanted. But the indigenous shamans who I met, they put it into context, like I just shared with you. Look, it's just a simple role that you have a particular connection to. That's what you're here for. And by the way, in your own culture, in the industrial world, lots of people now calling themselves shamans who've done one ayahuasca ceremony, or been in the forest for 10 days, or done whatever they've done and come back and said, oh yeah, I'm a shaman now, because I had one transformative experience, and giving shamanism a bad name. And yeah, misrepresenting actually shamanism is a very grounded way of life. It's a very physical, rooted and connected way of life that's about how I am in this waking dream. And the part of shamanism that's about ceremony and sleeping dream. And ceremony is it's like dreaming while you're awake, more like a lucid waking dream. That's what I describe ceremony as. You're awake in the dream of your everyday. And in that space, to make that connection strong, like to build that connection and to set up the structures that we need as human beings in order to maintain that connection. It's not enough to just have far out experiences. That's like going to the movies. Like, I saw a great film, it inspired me. I was like, my life has changed. And then 3 days later, it was a distant memory. And I'm just back.
And what about today? I guess when you were younger, and as most of us, when we are young, we are looking for identity, and you know, maybe you were looking, maybe that was a part of it.
Yes.
But as I'm hearing it today, you're beyond that, well beyond that, and I wanted to ask you, where, when we speak about the role of shaman, if we map that to the roles that we are having in traditional Western society, that may be a leader, that may be some kind of healer, physical healer, psychotherapist, priest. There are many aspects to it. And when you're looking at your work today, what do you think is the most important aspect of it? Or is it only one aspect of it? Can you somehow describe it?
Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, you're right, of course. This changed. And I'll tell you one story about really that landed for me, about accepting that I was actually going to stand up and say, as my indigenous elders were telling me, yes, take that name, shaman, own it, and explain it to your people, what that role is. This happened when I was in the Amazon. And I had been asked many times to work with the indigenous people. Like the very first time I was there, the old elder shaman brought his granddaughter to the ceremony and said, Yakov, come on, do your work. And I was like, well, and it wasn't just the granddaughter. It was 20 members of her family came for a healing, because they understand, like, healing for an individual is actually an individual that's part of a family system. If one part of that system is diseased, unwell, it's the whole system that needs to pay attention to create healing. So they came to watch the gringo shaman. It's like, you know, some kind of exotic night out.
Sorry, what do you think he was trying to do? I mean, he himself is a shaman, right?
Yeah, he said, I tried with her, but I'm too close to her.
Uh-huh.
You do it. I mean, he basically said, I've been dreaming about, his name is Raphael Taish. He's a very powerful, actually very humble, but very powerful man, lives in the Ecuadorian Amazon. His dreaming was what created this amazing organization called the Pachamama Alliance, or Fundación Pachamama. And when I first met him in his house, I was there. I was asked by the group to represent the group. We were there asking, could you run a ceremony for us? And I went there with an Achua, that's the tribe, who's connected to Raphael, and our group guide, Ecuadorian guide. And we sat in the house. There's just small, like a low fence around the edge of the house, and beautiful thatched roof and open space. And there's a place where the guests sit. And you come in the house and they ignore you. You sit down and they ignore you like you're not there. 20 minutes, at least 20 minutes. And the purpose, I was told, is you just have to get used to each other's company before you say hello. And then there was a very formal introduction. The Achua young man said hello to his elder. They exchanged news. Then the guide said hello. And then it was my turn. And before I opened my mouth, Raphael said, yeah, I already know you and your wife. And we've been dreaming these last weeks. And he said to me, tonight, you will understand my power as a shaman. And I want to know yours. And so tonight, I'll bring my granddaughter, who I've not been able to heal. And you will work with her. And then we'll see, he said. So I was like, oh my God. What do you say? I mean, thank you. Yeah, I'll try my best. And so the healing was actually it was all very quiet. And if you've ever seen a shamanic healing, it's quite noisy and dramatic, and lots of coughing and spitting, voices. And so I was doing my work, and there was a lot of children in this group, and I could hear that they were trying so hard not to laugh, not because they weren't laughing like, oh, this is stupid. They were laughing because it was like something completely new for them to have this guy from a completely other world singing and working with their sister or their cousin or like, and I just turned and looked at them and I just went, like that. And they just laughed and everything exploded. It was beautiful, beautiful moment. And then everything settled down and I was like, okay, now we can work. And we worked and she got better. And thank goodness, because in the Amazon, if the healing doesn't work and they get worse, it's your fault. There's no, they have no, like if you don't heal her and she gets worse, that's your fault. You're responsible. So it's quite a risk to take. But it's when that's your role, you do it. So a couple of years after that, I was back very close to there. And by that time, the news had spread. Oh, the gringo shaman is back in the forest. He's over there. Come if you want to. And so we bring a group, and the local shaman works with our group. And then people from the village come, and I work with them. And I do the work with one-to-one with them. And this particular time, an old shaman had walked for 4 days with his wife to come and see me. And I didn't know this. I found out later. And he'd asked for a healing, and the ceremony was a bit crazy. And I wasn't able to work with him that night. But the next day I went to see him, and he had a bad knee and he was in a lot of pain. So I did some work, and all the time I was working with him, there was a little old Amazonian woman sat on the other side of the little hut. And she was watching, and I could really feel her eyes on my back. I was like, I wonder who that is. Anyway, concentrating, doing my work. And after I finished, the old shaman looked at me, thanked me, and then looked at this woman and just went. And apparently this was his wife. And he had walked there for his wife. And the healing I gave him was just for him to check that it was safe for his wife to receive this healing from this, who is this guy? And I was amazed. And then I went to sit down in front of this magnificently beautiful old woman, and she took off her top. And that moment of trust, because her pain was here. So she took off her top, and that feeling of like, oh my God, this feeling of being trusted, I feel very emotional remembering that moment, because it was, I wasn't at that point looking for recognition. I was just working. But that recognition it touched something so deep inside me that I settled. Like the seeking for recognition. It wasn't completely done, but let's say the balance of power shifted to, we all need recognition. We all need celebration, appreciation, warmth, because we're human. But it's not, I need it so desperately in order to be okay. I am okay. I know who I am. Everything is fine. I'm just doing my work. And that moment was really the key moment for me, where I went, okay, I trust myself enough through the trust of these people who have nothing to gain from this.
Yeah. So in these cases, you were a healer.
Yes.
And in Western world,
Yes.
when you are visiting Croatia, or
Yes.
when you are
Yes.
in England or somewhere else,
yes.
what's your primary role? What do you do?
So the primary role now is to create spaces in which people become their own healers, or let's say they access, you might call it the archetype of the inner healer, or the inner shaman, or, the inner alchemist. So my role is to help people to take the raw material of their biographical experience and then their ancestral experience and their story about who they are and how they are and what they're capable of, and to alchemize all of that into empowerment. So our work is very simple. Movement medicine you can distill movement medicine into 3 phrases. One is stand up. Stand up means connect the intelligence, kinesthetic intelligence of your body. It's not even of the body, it's more the intelligence that lives the body, the intelligence that's beating the heart, that's circulating the blood, that's replacing the cells, that's looking out through these eyes. This, we call it the unbroken intelligence of life that is movement. And coming back to Gabrielle Roth, she often used to say, put 2 bodies next to each other. One of them is dead, one of them is living. How do you tell the difference? It's very simple. One of them is moving, the other one isn't. Therefore, life is movement. So simple. And so, thank you, Gabrielle. That was a classic piece of wisdom. And it's so clear. So that intelligence, kinesthetic intelligence, emotional intelligence, that means learning what your emotions are for. I wish we would teach this in schools to our children. Like, everyone is afraid, everyone is angry, everyone is sad, everyone can be joyful, everyone can be compassionate. Like, let's just learn these basic emotions and understand why they arise, what they're for. This is mammal intelligence. And through the body and movement, we can learn to make peace with these emotions, energy in motion, emotion, so that the heart is not clenched with so much emotional history that we carry in our muscles and in our fascia and in our bones. Then there's the mind, our mental intelligence. This disease of distraction, of busy mind, scroll, busy, lists, wake up, cortisol, alarm, wake up, have a coffee, get to work. Like this energy, which is basically low grade hypertension. And it's got worse since COVID, that time. It's got more and more pronounced. Like, there's this feeling of being on alert. It's hard to relax, to let go, to calm the nervous system. And you can't calm a nervous system by sitting on a cushion. An activated nervous system, in order to become calm, needs to up the heart rate and get physical and move and breathe and get fast and release, and then there's calm. Then calm can come to the nervous. And we're very lucky. We live in a time now where we can understand more about neuroscience and how the brain and guts and body are interrelated systems of intelligence. So body, heart, mind is stand up, connect, bring them together through movement, through focusing the mind, allowing the guts, the core of the body to become more sensitized again, interoceptive intelligence, to listen to the physical sensation of life moving in the body, and then physical movement. These 3 things, very simple: body, heart, mind, vertical connection, stand up inside yourself. And just that thing of like most of us in that impacted by life state, we're either like this, or we're like this, or we're like this. We're not present. We're not standing up inside ourselves, this place of dignity. I'm a human being, standing on my own 2 feet, connected to this living earth, connected to the sun. I'm a channel, I'm a bridge between earth and sky. This simple line of up like a tree, like changing with the seasons. That's step one. Second step is stand up, and we call it the journey of responsibility, or the invitation to grow up. That's the work of transforming our biography into medicine. And we say this from experience. I say it from my own personal experience. I've done massive amount of work with the trauma of the Holocaust in my own family and in my own people's story and the 1,000 years that led up to the Holocaust. And I know that every moment that we have lived and that our ancestors have lived, without exception, no matter how cruel or tragic it's been, given enough love and attention and resource and time, those experiences can become our strength. And that's what we mean by grow up. Growing up means I am not the product of my history. I am the product of the choice I'm making with what I do with my history and my family history. That's what I am. And if I go on telling that story, that my people are a victim and, that we're victims and we're always going to be victims and so I've got to be ready, then, well, we see what's going on in the world. And with that way of responding to history, like hurt people hurt people. And so I'm really passionate about that. And if I can do that and be here in the present, then I can look at that future and blow away all those predictions of doom, and not to hide my head in the sand, not to deny that we are creating what may be really difficult problems, and already are for many people in our world through climate change and through social injustice, all of these challenges we have of how to live together on this earth. But to have the courage to see the possibility in that road ahead and to dare to dream a dream where our descendants have evolved through every little bit of work we're doing, because we're the result of every little bit of work our ancestors did. Can you imagine my ancestors come in the room and see this, their next generations like talking passionately about life and how you can do it. They'd be like, wow, I can feel that at my back, like, ooh, there's such a beauty. We are our ancestors' dreams, the liberty we have. And we have that same relationship with the future. We have a responsibility to the future. That's why we call it the journey of responsibility. Stand up, body, heart, mind, grow up, past, present, future. This line, this line, this line. That's 2/3 of our work. The third part of it is play your role. What's your role? What are you here for? What did you come to this earth for? And to do the work of discovering what's your purpose, what matters to you, what do you want to give your life for, what do you live for, what would you die for? This question, and this has 3 steps. That's fulfillment, the fulfillment of who you are. So if you imagine, let's take an acorn. An acorn has within it all the potential to become a beautiful oak tree, as long as it has good earth, enough water, enough sunshine, and enough turning of the seasons, and some good fortune. So within that acorn is the pattern that is the fully grown oak tree. That's true for all of us. The difference for us human beings is that we give ourselves such a hard time for not being good enough. Like, you can imagine the acorn looking at all these beautiful big oak trees and going, it's not fair. Why are they so big and beautiful and I'm just a little acorn? No. Or a young tree, like, oh, I'm so small, you're so big, it's not fair. We grow with the seasons, given enough nourishment and safety and space to grow and good fortune. Fulfillment is that journey of your blueprint, the acorn becoming the oak tree, whatever that means to you, to us. And through that, it's like if you take a rainbow, the rainbow only exists because each color is precisely itself. So red is not trying to be blue. Like, it doesn't do that spiritual new age thing of, oh, we're all one. Like, yes, red and blue, but we're all one. No, red is red, blue is blue, yellow is yellow. And only when everything is itself do you have light. And that's the key. Become yourself. And through that, we experience the interconnected nature of life. When I experience myself as self, in my circle, connected to you, then we are interconnected. We are part of that thing that scientists have now come to understand is the nature of reality, that absolutely everything is a web of life, just like shamans have always said. Step 2, final step, realization of who you are, essence. That's the point of dissolution. Like, you dissolve only when you've become yourself. So many people in the new age are trying to become one with everything before they even know who they are. Like, that's so easy. Anyone can dissolve and be everything. But it's much more challenging when you've got something of value that you pay. You pay to life. This is why in shamanism we say, die and die again while you're still living. You have to pay. You have to pay, give something up that's valuable. Make a payment, reciprocity, give something back. And that way we have the potential of remembering that we come from this mystery that we are. And then back again, body. So this is the cycle that we teach, and we teach that cycle. Stand up, grow up, play your role. And we teach that cycle through what we call the 5 dimensions of relationship. So you don't just do it with yourself. That's the first dimension. The second dimension is now do that work in your one-to-one relationships. Like, how am I with this fascinating mystery that's you? Your eye contact is very beautiful, by the way. Thank you. I noticed that the minute you said hello. You're very present in that way. It's very warm. And the same for you. Thank you. It's very warm to be met in that way. It's encouraging, and I appreciate it very much. So one-to-one appreciation, like, how do I in my one-to-one relationships be myself and support you to be yourself? And I'm lucky enough to have been doing that for 38 years with one woman. And the nectar of the harvest is beyond worth all the effort, all the tears and sweat and fury and difficulties of a man and a woman living together. That's the second dimension. The third dimension is our relationship with the community, our sense of belonging, our sense of what we give back to life. The fourth dimension, our relationship with the non-physical world, our ancestors, our descendants, our guiding spirits. You could call it your guiding star, call it your angel, call it whatever you want, whatever guides you that is non-physical, you're dreaming, that place of extraordinary power that exists, which is the imaginal world. And to build that relationship in a way that is, as I was talking about, making that connection really strong. So that channel is open. So in shamanism, we say, become a hollow bone for your dream, to bring your dream, what matters to you, here to this earth. That's shamanism. Bring your dream here onto earth. And, deal with where you're going after you die when you get there. And the fifth dimension, last thing is then our relationship with the source, with the mystery itself. And those 5 dimensions, self, one-to-one, community, the imaginal world or the spirits, and the source or the divine, whatever word you have for that's we do that work of stand up, grow up, play your role through those 5 dimensions. That's the work of movement medicine, and we do it all with great music and really simple, precise, guided exercises that will teach you the internal structure, help you to strengthen the internal structure of presence that allow the fluidity of your soul to move in the body. So we work a lot with fluidity and structure. I used to hate structure. I used to think structure was a prison. It's imprisoning. But until somebody said to me, well, that's interesting, Yakov. Let's remove your skeleton for 10 minutes and see how you manage. I was like, oh, that doesn't sound good. So this simple conversation was like, liberating structure like your skeleton that gives you the container through which the fluidity of who you are can be expressed. So this dance of yin and yang, of opposites, this is key to movement medicine, and I believe it's key to peace, and that's the role of the shaman. The shaman in a conflict never takes sides. Never takes sides. If somebody's being badly behaved, they might say that's bad behavior, but they won't say it's your fault. They'll say, what's going on here? That this is happening. What's your part in that? How are you playing this conflictual dance? What are you doing? They always, the shaman's role is to have a foot in both worlds, in the world of opposites. And in that place where they meet, that's where the medicine is. Because they call it, I talked about this last night, they call it in Quechua language, Yanantin. Yanantin, or in the language of the Zapara people of the Ecuadorian Amazon, they call it Samara, neutrality. It's the spirit of neutrality is in the midst of conflict, is holding that gate open for what's not yet been imagined, that allows this conflict to move forward and find peace. The meeting of opposites rather than of opposites, like that. And this is our work, to do that internally, between us and in the world.
There's a question I would like to ask you that is on my mind lately, and especially reading your books. The question of power. You mentioned power a lot. And
power. So, yes, you asked about power. There are many different kinds of power. Societal power matters. We don't all start on an even ground. If you're in India and you're born in a lower caste family, there's a hierarchy of what you are allowed to achieve in life. This is what we mean by societal power. Then there's positional power. Positional power is you're working in a company. You're the CEO, or you're somebody who just started in the company. Different levels of power that's related to the structure of that business or community. And when you walk out of the door onto a dance floor, for instance, that's not visible if you don't know that that person is a CEO or just beginning. But it matters in that structure. And it really matters if you don't pay attention to it. But what I'm really talking about is personal power. And personal power is not related to either of those. Personal power is about what you choose to do with the cards that life deals you. We get given in a place where we're born. Some people say we choose it. I have no idea. I just know that we're born into something and we have experience as children. Personal power is what we choose to do with that. And it matters because we have, again, all it takes is one person to see us, to believe in us, to set us on that road of developing personal power. And why do we want to develop personal power? Because, if you have a dream and you want to bring that dream to earth, you need personal power. You need strength. You need belief. You need allies. You need support at your back. You need mentors. You need therapists. You need occasionally, a healer. You need all of this support, and you need to go on developing and cleaning your relationship with power. Otherwise, you'll just end up being the next person who's powerful, who abuses that power. So this is ongoing work, and it really matters. And this really shows up in a relationship. And, I'll tell you a funny dream. When my wife and I got together in our 20s, very soon after we got together, we had exactly the same dream. It's a little odd dream. We were making love in a park on the side of a hill. And there was a path going down there, and we were making love, and kind of, this seems a bit public. This is a bit strange. Maybe we're dreaming. I think we're dreaming. And all these people walking past, and different characters from our lives were there. And it was a very odd dream. And we woke up and we told each other the dream. And it was like, God, we had exactly the same dream. There was only one difference. In my dream, I was on top. In Susannah's dream, she was on top. Power. We were, this was our first meeting with let's work this out. And we, in this case, we're a man and a woman. You cannot come into a relationship without bringing everything with you, your broken hearts, your trust issues, your relationship with your parents, how they were, what you experienced in the room, what your grandparents, great-grandparents, and everything else. It's all present. The second you make love with somebody, boom, it's all there. It's all there. So there's no such thing as casual sex, by the way. And it's good to know that you're opening the door when you go that intimate. And it's good to know. And we've taken many, many years to end up in a place now where we're both incredibly strong with each other. And our strength is mutually enhancing. And we're incredibly different. We each have our own bedroom. We always have. Because when we got together, I was living in a community. Susannah came to live in this community. In that community, everyone had their own room. And we discovered that was really helpful, that actually sometimes we need space. We need time to be separate. And then we created a particular rhythm to do with Susannah's monthly cycle, which was like this. And it was really, when we kind of noticed, it was like, oh, this is really wonderful. We need a few days of the month where I'm in my room, you're in your room, and we're just coming more to a sense of self and my own dreaming. But we have developed a language for mutually enhancing, uplifting, encouragement and appreciation of each other. And without how much work we've each done to notice how what we brought into that relationship was a fight. We were both fighting for life in a way. We were both fighting to be recognized, not to be the one who was to blame for any conflict. We were fighting to protect our wounds. We were just a man and a woman working it out. But we have worked it out. It's not that we always have what you might call total harmony and peace and everything's lovely. No. If you live like that, there's no oomph, no edge. There's plenty of edge between us.
This is how you grow, actually.
Yeah.
Because in those close relationships, I think that this is where you polish the sword. It's like
100%. And create, like, polishing the sword is part of it, and then creating safety is the other part, because we're animals, so we're always just sensing, like every little muscle movement, we've reacted to each other before we even know. And we can be like that, just because, I looked at you with love and you were busy watering the plant. I'm like, she's never there for me. See? Like, boom, gone, story, history, wounded child, straight there. Relationship, in our experience, is for healing. That's the purpose of marriage, is healing one another. Like, really healing one another and becoming for each other the lover you always dreamed of but didn't even know how to describe. And maybe we're very slow, but that took us I would say it took me more than 20 years to earn my wife's trust. And it was 20 years really well spent. And then it goes deeper. It's not that we didn't trust each other, but we had a quantum leap at around that time. And it's really when we learned to be angry without hurting one another, to take responsibility for our own feelings. So I mentioned last night we have martial arts boxing gloves in our living room and these big pads so we can put them on. And when we know we're a bit with each other, out come the gloves, and Susannah will look me in the eye and she's like, bam, bam. And I'm like, come on. And then it's my turn. And that making the expression of frustration, irritation, just fire, making that safe means that channel of fire, which is passion, is safe. And if you don't do that, if you dampen down your fire over years and years and years and years and years, then you'll get very bored with each other. Your sex life will disappear and you'll be like most old couples you see who hardly talk to each other. They're just surviving till one of them dies.
Can she hold you? Yesterday I wasn't commenting, but I was really wondering.
With these gloves, yeah. I mean, she doesn't hold straight. She moves back. Okay. But yes, she's strong. Okay. She's super strong. I mean, you have to find a way. And there would be other ways. If you were very strong and one of you was less strong, you could just have like a mountain of pillows and a tennis racket. And I could be looking at you and
we do it as well. We do it at home as well.
It's really helpful because we need to find a way in long-term relationship of dealing with irritations and frustrations, which are just part of life. Yeah.
Cool. How much?
We have 10 more minutes.
10 more minutes.
Let's say 15.
Yeah. Okay. So I've heard you in particularly one talk that I was listening to. You were mentioning integration a lot.
Yeah.
And while I was listening to your description of this, I would call it shamanic structure of personal development and of social engagement and of basically human progress or human progress.
Yeah.
If I may say, put it that way. This is also an integration of knowledge. And today we live in particularly interesting times where we have access to those traditions, different traditions. We have the information at hand. And we also have Western progress that's happening all the time as well, in scientific terms, in social terms, and we have difficulties. And I was interested in how do you comment on integrating traditional knowledge with Western knowledge in order to achieve the next step of human development?
Yeah, well, thank you. It's such an important question. And I'm immediately, what comes to mind is a beautiful Achua leader called Domingo Pais. He's an elder in his community. He's been active within all kinds of structures to protect the forest and his people's culture for decades. He's an extraordinary man. And this is very interesting because the Achua people have never been defeated. Even when the conquistadors came with their guns and their big cannon, they couldn't defeat the Achua. The Achua were way too fierce for them. They were like, you don't come into our forest. And they've never been defeated. Now, an indigenous culture that's never been defeated, that's confident, that has an unbroken lineage that goes back thousands of years, is very different to an indigenous culture that's been, like so many have, totally mistreated, abused, attacked, destroyed in some instances. And thank goodness we live in a time now where that pride in who we are as human beings and our indigeneity to our own bodies, to our own land, to our people is starting to really become more apparent. What Domingo said, when you go to visit the Achua, we go to visit many times. We have 3 godchildren there. So we go every year. And one of the things you notice is they have this confidence to be interested. Like, well, you know, the way that our women give birth, we do it like this. How do you do it? Oh, that sounds interesting. That could be really helpful. Wow, that knowledge that you guys have learned in the West is, wow, that's amazing. That's fantastic. Like, wow, we have a lot of respect for that. And so Domingo says the only way that human beings are going to find our way through these times and challenges is this: integración, the best of all worlds. The best of all worlds. We want the best of Western psychology, the best of systems theory, the best of family constellations, psychotherapy, the best of traditional shamanic healers, the best of surgeons and laser treatment and anesthetic where needed. Like a hospital, a place where somebody goes when they're ill. My dream would be that all of this would be present in that place of healing, that the therapist would be there, the visualizing expert, the systems theory, the family constellator, the shaman, the musicians, the dance therapists, the surgeons, the doctors, that everyone would be there to give that person the best opportunity of healing. And we're very lucky that I have an enormous respect for what Western thought, right from the time, you know, Socrates, Aristotle, all of these ancient, brilliant human beings, and what we've developed in terms of our understanding of healing wounded psyches is, and the understanding of power, we talked about that, and power dynamics, which is not something that's present in an indigenous shaman's training, which is why there's often a lot of difficulty when young, naive, beautiful humans go into the forest to meet these amazing exotic beings and want to get close. And there's no training for an indigenous shaman. And like, what do you do? And it causes a lot of trouble. So this integration of knowledge, which we see happening with the Achua, not perfectly, that, of course, we often learn through making mistakes. But nevertheless, they have mobile phones now. And now they're kind of going, wow, how do you limit that open window to everything? How do you control that? Are you okay if we continue a bit? 5 more minutes. Okay, great. So science and shamanism now, science and mysticism, because it's not just shamanism, are closer than they've ever been. And that's inevitable. A really good scientist is a mystic. A really good mystic is a scientist. And they need to be. And the idea that these things are opposites is just part of this story of separation and negative polarization that's not good for anyone. So my understanding is how important it is that we learn from all of these different threads of wisdom that make up the tapestry of our human wisdom and experience. Because, Domingo, integración, that's the way.
Yeah, and I mean, in those regards, we are living in beautiful times.
Yes.
And I do think that challenges are not only here are here basically to test the direction.
Yeah.
And to bring the best from both worlds.
Yes.
In order to make progress.
Yes.
So I'm glad that we are doing our part in that story.
It's so interesting, isn't it, how critical Western people are of the West. Like, many people are like, oh, the West, it's terrible. We did all these terrible, terrible things. Yes. And we also did this, and like, look at the art. Like, I've seen buildings in your city that like, what an incredible human creativity to be able to have a vision like that and make it physical.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And for the end, we mentioned death on quite a few moments of this conversation.
Yeah.
And we will all go through it.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the nice thing to end with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the news, isn't it? That's the only thing we can be certain of, is that you and I, we will all be dust, and at least this will be dust at some point, and will become something else. And in shamanic practice, a good relationship with mortality is fundamental, because in my experience, when death is in the room, if you're with somebody who's dying and let's say they're not in agony, let's say they're in relatively okay condition, that they're in a relatively accepting state of the fact that their life is coming to an end. In those situations where death is present, the kind of conversation that can be had is so profound. And so shamanic cultures around the world teach us that there is this presence, an archetypal presence called benevolent death. And the way that we meet that in our work is by encouraging people, one, to recognize their mortality, to have death close, because, death focuses the mind. Like, if you've got 1 year to live, what would you do? You don't know. You may have 1 hour to live. Or if you've got 10 years, what would you do? So death brings that focus that if we believe in our own immortality, we'll never be there. We're like, like teenagers, we're going to live forever. And we work in our work every now and again with an ancient ceremony called the burial ceremony. And the burial ceremony is basically, we get people to dig their grave, dig a proper size grave, line it, make it waterproof, make it comfortable, and then put a couple of, put wood across the top and then a tarpaulin and then earth on top, and make sure you have a good breathing hole and space to get in. And as the sun goes down, then you will come into your grave and you'll be closed in, plenty of oxygen. It's not dangerous. Might feel dangerous, but it's not dangerous. And then our job is to drum every hour through the night to make sure you stay awake. And the ceremony invites you to be in your grave and to, with the presence of benevolent death, and to ask yourself from this perspective of being dead, to look at your life and go, what was the effect that my life had on the people around me? And from that place, you see so much. And then this goes on through the night. And then just before the sun rises, you're invited to negotiate with death. Like, give me a year, give me 5 years. And death will say to you, sure, what are you going to give me? And that's your commitment. What am I living for? What matters? And then take those things, those realizations. And realizations are usually quite big. And in order to integrate big realizations, you have to chop them up into little pieces that are doable, simple, small steps. Like, let's start with first thing in the morning, wake up, look at my wife, smile. That would be a good integration. Not, oh, I'm tired. How about, oh, sweetheart, we're still here. Wow, we're still here. Oh, I'm so glad that we're here. How beautiful. What a different way to start the day. That's one thing Death told me. Smile at your wife in the morning. This is simple. That the big thing that came from was live with much more love and appreciation. That's a big thing. Like, what does that mean? Chunk it down into doable, practical steps that you will do, that are small enough that you're actually going to do them. Because if you do them, you will create momentum. If you stay in a nice big emotional realization, like Don Juan Castaneda's teacher says, emotional realizations, they come all the time. They're meaningless. What matters is how you break them down into things that you will do. And we love the feeling of success. So set yourself up for success by taking those big ideas and making them small enough that you can start to live them and walk that way in your day-to-day life. And that is the shaman's path, or the path of the inner shaman, to bring together all of these different aspects that you so beautifully named: ceremony, healer, dreaming, cycle of the year, all of these different steps that we can evolve as individuals, in relationship, in community, connected to our place as a species, as part of this miraculous biosphere, so that we can create a dream for our descendants and our ancestors, but particularly for our descendants, that, sometimes I go and see my descendants, not necessarily my own, but our descendants. I go and visit in my imaginal world through dancing. And I see that we made it to a better place, that we went on evolving. And I don't have my head in the sand. I can see that the journey between here and there is a long one. But I believe in us as a species. I really do. I believe in you, and I believe in you and our capacity to make this journey. We have a magnificent opportunity to do so. It's called life in a body on earth.
We are doing it.
We're doing it.
Well, thank you. This was inspiring.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yakov. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your dream, for doing the work.
Yeah.
Hopefully we will meet again.
Yeah. Yeah.
In any, I don't know.
Chapter 2.
Chapter 2, yeah.
Yeah, you moved me.
Yeah, I saw. Thank you for your tears. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Death is very moving, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was like quite a few things got connected.
Yeah. Good. I'm very glad.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. If you like it, share it. Share the word. Share the dream. And see ya. Bye.
Ciao.
Thank you.